All right, welcome everybody to the Adam and Adam Show, another installment today. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about how not to mess up your expensive deal that you've got a nice contract on, and make sure you have the correct contract for the type of deal that you are putting together. So Adam, tell us a little bit about some of the mistakes that agents can make if they don't understand whether a parcel or a piece of property or whatever they're selling is really residential or it's commercial. Give us a little overview of what can happen there.
Well, you know what? Can I lead off with a little vignette?
Sure.
I recently had an occasion where I was actually sitting in the office, and the phone rings, and I pick up the phone and, hi, it's Adam. How can I help you? And the guy on the other end of the line says, "What's your correct address?" I said, well, why do you ask? He says, "I just want to know where to send notice of service for the lawsuit that I'm handing over." I'm like, yikes, what are we talking about here? And the reason I bring that up was one of my agents, unbeknownst to me, basically went and got an industrial listing and asserted to the seller that she was an industrial expert, that she had industrial experience. Now, at that point, I think she had been licensed for about 2 weeks. Mm. And when I got a hold of the document, it was written on the FAR contract for the sale of condominiums and residential homes.
Oh, wow.
And if I had any hair left, they would have leapt to their untimely death. So the reason that I wanted to start off with that is it's not that hard to do, especially if you're brand new in the business, you're scrambling around, you're excited because you got a deal, grab the first thing you can fill in the blanks on, and oops, now we've got a problem.
Yeah. Well, first, the problems that you bring up with that vignette, as you called it, is that don't hold yourself out to be an expert when you're really not to begin with. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. And ultimately, she wasn't, ready to do any kind of industrial without help. That's clear, right?
Right. Well, that was what she was being told, because she worked in the residential side of things.
Okay.
And they're telling her, talk to Adam, talk to Adam, talk to Adam.
And she didn't.
And she tried to wing it and got caught. The other thing that's really easy to do is people don't get the distinction between residential and commercial. And I understand that it's real estate. But what we're doing in the commercial division or commercial world is we're really selling annuities. We're not selling something for somebody to live in. We're selling an income stream. And that's what people are really buying. And it gets kind of sticky beyond that real quick.
Well, if you don't understand what you're getting yourself into and you use the wrong contract, like she used the FAR bar contract. So people outside the state of Florida, the FAR bar contract is the contract that the Florida Bar and the Florida Association of Realtors put together years ago. And it's really the main contract that's used in Florida on residential deals up to a certain amount of units, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, that form should not be used for a commercial deal. What are the problems with using a residential form, getting everybody into a contract? Let's talk about a few of those things that you have seen happen, not that you've done it. Maybe you did it early on, but I know you haven't done it in the last 34 years, hopefully. But what are the challenges when you don't understand what you're getting your customers into, either buyer or seller?
Fair enough. I'll tell you, the first problem you got is the due diligence process is entirely different.
For sure.
You don't call up a home inspection service, come over and have them do a quick inspection, and you're good to go. Because you're buying an income stream, you got separate financial due diligence for the income, the books and records. You've got environmental concerns that have got to be addressed. If phase one, you've got issues with financing. You can't just go to the local bank and say, hey, I've got an 8-unit apartment building. What do you got? Mm-hmm. That's not the way this works. It's not an FHA or VA deal where you've got 3% down and you can go to any mortgage broker in town. You've got to go to a lender who specializes in that type of property. And then you've got issues with estoppels and estoppel certificates. What ownership actually owns the property? And is the party we're dealing with entitled to convey?
Yeah.
It might be hard to believe, but occasionally partners will sell property out from underneath another partner without the partner knowing it.
It's happened. I've seen it happen in my long, storied real estate lawyer career for sure.
Oh yeah, those shenanigans go on all the time.
Yeah,
it's a more complex set of inspections and processes than a residential. And the other thing is, and you know this, if you're a lawyer and you're representing a buyer and a commercial deal comes in on a residential contract, the first thing you're going to do is just rip it apart. You're going to tear it up because you're going to say to your client, listen, I can't protect you on this.
Yeah.
There's no protective covenants for commercial property here. We've got another deal, another document.
If the parties are ignorant enough to sign it without counsel, or maybe with counsel that an attorney that does personal injury and doesn't really realize what they're doing, if they're ignorant enough to sign it and you get an attorney come in that actually knows what they're doing, ultimately that's one of the challenges we talked about in our red flags training. And if you've not seen that training, go to theadamshow.com and sign up for that training. But ultimately, there's no meeting of the minds because you've got a commercial property that's on a residential form, and there's not a way of enforcing a contract that doesn't have the legal ability to be enforced.
Well, you know this. It's negotiations on time. It's like, listen, this isn't even the appropriate form. And hey, listen, client, I watch the voodoo I do so well. Let me go give them a whack for you. And now you're back and renegotiating.
Yeah. You open up the whole ball of wax, and what you thought was a deal that was a contract is probably not any longer.
Yeah. Surprise. Guess what you're doing over again. And the other one that absolutely drives me bonkers is that everybody thinks, and I know it might be a little bit out of the mainstream of what we're talking about, but everybody thinks, put the commission in the contract and you're protected. And I'm like, no, you're not. Are you the buyer? Are you the seller? No. What do you call that? It's a third-party beneficiary.
Third-party beneficiary. Now, it helps you to prove what the seller promised, even though you have a listing agreement that says that. But leading up from the listing agreement to an offer to a purchase and sale contract, whatever it is, residential or commercial, depending on what you're working on.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes there could be conversations where someone agrees, or the seller, as you say, gives you a haircut, unilaterally says, I'm not paying you that much. It doesn't protect you, but it helps in terms of how much they agreed to pay you, and it's a sign that's in writing that says, I'm entitled to 6, 10%, whatever it is. It helps, but you're not a party to that contract. The brokerages are not a party to that contract. You're a third-party beneficiary of the contract, which means there's a contract outside of this contract that says your rights, obligations, and how much you should get paid. But we know, from our dealings with your sellers, that you got to do whatever you can to protect yourself, but by no means is it a way that you would want to hang on that in the contract, the amount of commission.
Well, my comment is, we'll get the MLS department to pay it. Yeah, good luck with that.
It's not gonna happen.
That's all it. Yeah, right. Well, the other thing is, you'll see people out there, just trying to put these things together, like you said, with the wrong contract, and there are absolutely no protective covenants for the buyer in there either. So it's you've got the wrong, it's the completely wrong tool for the wrong job at the wrong time. And
the residential contracts in Florida, a lot of them say up to 4 units on them.
Right. Well, that's the deal. That's the bright line as far as the federal government's concerned.
That's what I was bringing up.
5 unit. Yeah, absolutely.
But I always told people and taught them in these workshops that I did, if it's more than 1 unit, move towards a commercial form, because your due diligence is different when you have renters, and it's a lot more in depth. And so people have argued with me, well, wait a minute, this says up to 4 units. Yes, you can legally use it, and depending on what kind of loan someone's getting, a lender will ultimately look at that contract and say it's okay. But does it protect your customer? They're not your client, unless you have a fiduciary duty and it's something in writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not protecting your customer in a place where you're going to get the kind of due diligence that you really need for the buyer to make a decision on whether they should move forward with this, correct?
Listen, I absolutely agree. I would say that really and truly, unless it's like a duplex, when you even though the technically 4 units still is construed to be residential,
Right.
I'd put it on a commercial contract. I want to make sure that I get all that due diligence material in there and laid out.
Yes.
And like our contract makes the buyer move forward, every 5,
That's right.
7, 10 days. See, the problem I have with the FAR contracts, and don't get me wound up on that, is
we won't
try to make a contract that was all things to all people.
Yeah.
And what it ended up being was nothing to nobody. And 99 out of 100 agents, including myself when I was in that business, couldn't figure it out. And it's not that complex, but it's like, okay, you fill in this blank, you put NA here, but where do you put this? Oh, that's another addendum.
Yeah.
Well, where do you put this? That's another addendum.
Yeah.
I think they've got an addendum for everything.
There is, and they did it that way, Adam, because as a licensee in Florida and most states, I don't know what your state is, and ultimately you better get with your broker to figure out what form you're going to use. We're giving you general information based on our knowledge, but your broker has every right and obligation to tell you what to do based on their business practices and whatever their attorney tells them. But there is an addendum and language to put into the section for additional clauses so that you aren't practicing law as an agent, as a licensee. And so let me just real quick tell them our contract. When you said our contract, you and I did paragraph by paragraph our own form many years ago that I think this was 20 years ago, that you can still use, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So the moral of the story here is be very careful with what form you use depending on what you're selling.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
The other thing they really need to really get their attention on is really understanding, and this is where I think we're going with this, is what really is a commercial deal.
Uh-huh.
And I say that in 2 different ways, okay? What's a commercial deal by definition, and what makes a commercial deal let's say a financially viable transaction? So those are 2 separate, distinct issues. Just because it's commercial real estate doesn't mean it's commercially going to provide income. And I got news for you. I've been at this 35 going on 36 years, and here's a news flash. If it doesn't cash flow now, unless there's a real compelling story, it's never going to cash flow. And there's not always there's not always somebody stupider out there that's going to buy your mistake for you or from you. It just doesn't work that way. So, I mean, you really, especially if you start dabbling on the fringes, you really need to understand what makes a commercial transaction by definition commercial real estate.
And so this is something you teach.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You've taught all about this. It's called Anatomy of a Commercial Deal, is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've taught this at multiple realtor associations all over Florida.
Oh, yeah. We just got done banging one out for Nova Southeastern University. I think I did Dade County, Miami and the Beaches last year. I think I did, I want to say Fort Lauderdale, probably sometime late in the fall, the greater Fort Lauderdale, and, which is now Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, showing them what makes a deal, what it is and what the distinctions are. 5 units and more, definitely a commercial transaction.
Well, we know that for sure, but
how about mixed use? We're starting to see a lot of the office on the first floor, maybe a residential unit or above. Big trend. Okay, what is it? Is that residential or is it commercial?
Good question. And so let's talk. We've got a live training coming up in Fort Lauderdale at Nova University again. May, when is it? May what?
4th.
24th.
May 24th. It's all day.
May 24th, 2019. We've got a live training coming up to where you can join us. Well, you You're going to be there teaching it.
I'm definitely going to be there.
Join us for a live training on what's called anatomy of a commercial deal, and tell us what's included in that whole day training. What are you going to teach them?
Well, we're going to go through, we're going to start off first off by identifying what is a commercial transaction by definition. Right. And then what I'm going to talk about is the ever mysterious what buildings and building types there are, and more importantly, building classes, and why, everybody's running around saying it's a Class A building. Well, it's not. We'll also get into a topical discussion on leases, everything from absolute bond leases to licenses, so you understand that the income stream of a commercial property is built directly on the back of those leases, what they mean. We'll go through and we'll identify the buildings, the product type. We'll talk about locational considerations. We'll talk about the income, the different types of leases, and then we'll really kind of hit it hard and look at doing some financial analysis to find out if the deal even makes sense. And let me tell you why that's critical. See, unlike residential real estate, you can't just get on the phone and call up like Commonwealth Eastern Mortgage and say, hey, I've got an 18 unit that I need financing for. Every single commercial lender in South Florida lends on something different. They all have their pet projects.
Sure.
There's some lenders that won't touch apartments at all, but you throw an industrial deal at them and they're all over. Or conversely, they hate industrial deals, but they'll do the apartments, as fast as you can bring them into them. The other thing is that whole underwriting process is different because you're looking at price per door, not price per square foot. What are the real rates in the marketplace? And the other thing is you better make sure you're right on with vacancy and collection loss and things like that. Because I was talking to a gal you and I know who's a senior lender. And she was telling me the other day, she's like, we get these packages with like 5% vacancy and collection losses. And she goes, I go over to the shredder and just, because she knows it's not real. Yeah. So what makes it a commercial deal by definition? And then what makes it a commercial deal based on its income and expenses? And is it really a deal? And how do you articulate that to a potential customer? And there's going to be a lot of exercises. We're going to talk about, the comping process, and the metrics that I use when I look at comps. What are we looking at? Why do we pick them? Size, style, configuration, age, utility, and location. And it's not like a house. You can't just go pick one out of Fox Run and go, okay, give me 5 more Fox Run properties. Oh, no. We're looking at the net operating income. We're going to start to talk about financial measures. That's not a financial measures class. We'll do a real topical look at those. But at the end of the day, you'll walk out with the ability to, one, identify the product type, identify the building class, and then if you can lay your hands on your numbers, you'll be able to understand if it's actually a deal in the context of the market. Is it a real transaction? Because that's the other problem that people in the business get. They get wound up on a deal. They get wound up on a I know I'm not supposed to say deal. It's a bad word. But they get wound up on a deal, okay? And the problem is until they get through the whole underwriting process, they don't know that it's not a deal. You'll see these offering memorandums that come out with like 40% returns. There's no such thing. There is no building that has a 40% return. And if it does, there's a problem. There's a reason why it's got a 40% return. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's some high yielding properties, but usually they require wearing a bulletproof vest to get your rent.
Yeah.
That's not what you want to stumble into. And if you do, you want to know it. So we'll talk about all that stuff.
You're a residential realtor. You want to know more about commercial. You want to be able to stick your toe in the water, maybe on some commercial deals because there's opportunity. You're out networking. You're meeting lots of people. And someone asks you, could you help me do this? This course, this live one-day course is the start of some new training.
Absolutely. And know this, and this is kind of the beauty of it. I'm really kind of excited as to where we are in the cycle right now, because when I got started way back in 1983, interest rates were 18%,
Yeah.
not 3.5% and 4.5%.
Yep.
It was brutal back then. So you've got a perfect storm for people that are thinking about making the transition. And, these guys, literally the guys and gals that are in residential today, they're on the front line because they're meeting the people who are going to be buying the commercial properties up front.
Right.
Think about it. A businessman moves into the marketplace. What's the first thing he does? He buys a house and then what? Wants to set up a business or is looking for an office to lease. Guess what? They're the front line. And hey, why not make an extra 20 grand? Pop a commercial transaction, make an extra 20 grand just because you've been able to identify it, put it together, and recognize what is a commercial deal.
Look, I've been licensed since I was 19, almost 30 years coming up, another year and a half. And when I look at the possibilities of selling residential real estate and learning commercial to add to my arsenal of things I can sell, list, and create income for, there's no reason why every residential realtor shouldn't begin the process of learning how to sell commercial. And ultimately, this is the place to begin. This anatomy of a commercial deal is the starting place. It's the starting point. And so how much is this one-day getting started workshop?
The actual live one-day workshop is $197. $197. I mean, listen, if you do one transaction, you've only paid for about, 4,000 seats?
Yeah, right.
It's nuts. I mean, really and truly, it's nuts. It's inexpensive. It's an eye-opening process. But I'll tell you what, it's just mind blown when you see all the materials that go into the process and what really makes a deal. Plus, they'll have access to a bunch of forms, the videos, and the recorded feeds. So it's not like if you miss something, it's not like you'll never hear it again.
Right, and so this is on video. They'll get access to the portal where they can log in and watch all the videos that have been recorded for this course. And being live, not extra. I mean, this is what you charge for this course, just video. And ultimately, they can be there live to ask you questions as you're explaining and giving them all of this introductory information. Correct.
Absolutely. Well, and remember, Adam, when I do these things live, and I joke about this, I never, ever, ever teach to the book. What I do is literally I come out with ripped right from the headlines. Yeah. Here's a deal. Well, you've seen it. This is something I got this morning. Let's take a look at this deal. Is this a deal? Tell me what product type this is. Tell me what class it is. Let's go find out. Because, for example, I'll show them where to go to get resources to come up with cap rates, even if the property's in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Yeah. I'll show them how to do that as part of the class for free. Yeah. But the deal there is now you've got that information that you can craft a pricing model with. Yeah. And figure out whether it is a deal or not. And it's just huge. It's huge.
It's a beautiful thing. And if they stick with this long enough through this process, they're going to learn about secret weapon letter, how to utilize really amazing marketing techniques that can be used. Residential, commercial, works much better in commercial. But there's so much here to learn, and we can help.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll tell you, the beauty of it is, like I said, because it's ripped from the headlines, every single class is different. It's timely, it's topical, and it's stuff they need to know right now. If they're going to encounter it, they need to get their arms around it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So join Adam on May 24th, Nova University. The information is below. If you have any questions, shoot him an email at avonromer@gmail.com. And we look forward to seeing you at this workshop. Anything to
see you in the next installment of the Adam and Adam Show.
The Adam and Adam Show. This is it. So we're signing off on this episode of the Adam and Adam Show. We're thankful you're here. We hope you learned a little bit to be careful when you're going to put together a deal that's more than one unit. Be very, very leery of what form you're going to use. Bring in your counsel. Bring in your broker for sure. Start with your broker and see if they'd like to make a decision. But just be careful, because one of the things you can do is look really stupid to your buyer and or seller if it comes to pass that you didn't use the correct form, and they will lose all trust in you altogether.
Oh,
so
yeah.
this is important
Quickly.
stuff.
Quickly.
So thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you in the next installment. Bye-bye.